And boom, and we're live. We're live. We're live. And good evening, and welcome to another edition of Life is People. And well, this is a conversation that I've personally been fascinated to speak to this person ever since our past first cross. So I don't really want to waste any time. Really, I just want to go straight to it. And so let's just go into it. How are you doing tonight, Travis?
I'm doing pretty darn good. Doing really well.
That's great. Now, this is sort of like I want to give a quick intro to sort of people, and again, I recommend that if anyone listens to this, they go away and just do some research into some of the things we're going to talk about. But basically, your kind of history and where we came, our paths crossed. We met on the forum for one of the ants meetings the first time we met. But you got a fascination. It's something I've been fascinated for a long time, which is about how the Safe network, particularly, will transform the whole medical community. And I know that's something you're interested in. You've got an interest in healing, and and you've been doing it for a long time. So I think the sort of I think the best place to start, Travis, I think we really would be. Would you maybe just sort of outline what your ideas for health safe, as you call it, and we're just and just take it from there, really.
Well, it's the theme of tonight's talk discussions. Really, the theme is healing, and it started out with I've been a healer professional, in the medical field for 20 years now, and I at some point realized the relationship between a patient and a provider or doctor, PA, or it's been wounded, and so part of it was to start a journey. I'm just trying to heal myself, so then I could heal others, but then also to heal that relationship between a provider and a patient. And really, as you start that journey and as I've made progress, I've noticed myself focusing on different tools or ways of healing my environment and connection. It led me right to Safe. And even though we don't have a functioning network, it's played a big role in the last year or so for me and coming up with all these different projects and ideas. So Health Safe really is just taking what we already have that works, which is open source software of electronic medical record system. The best one I've found thus far is the Vista, which is the Veteran Affairs $2 billion project. And it was originally designed to be a decentralized health program. And that was in the 70s. And it seems perfect to just leverage right on top of the Safe network. So that's what Health Safe will be. It'll probably start in the early infant stage of just a place for people to store their health information. And since that can be a pretty sensitive and private, our health is probably one of the most private and personal things that we have. A password isn't something that everybody can remember. Nobody, not everybody has a fingerprint. Not everybody has a cornea for recognition, but everybody has a heart. Everybody has a heartbeat. And so that's the best way to authenticate it, is planning on using the electrophysiologic heart signal, basically the heartbeat. And that'll be the login for Health Safe. And the Safe network is perfect for that, because you're going to have information that is permanent and much more difficult to be hacked. So that's kind of the gist.
Well, what kind of fascinated me and inspired me from the moment I heard about MaidSafe was the idea of breaking down the middlemen, and that's why I saw the medical thing. I thought this is just open for this kind of technology, because wherever you are in the world, you're always going to come across a middleman between you and your health, and I think that's a wrong perception. Now that's from big pharmacy companies through to the state, through to snake oil doctors, if you want to say. People are just always in the middle of it, and I think immediately I thought, well, the idea of a network where I could have complete private and secure access to a doctor anywhere around the world, not just in my local vicinity where I'm just restricted because of the choices where I lived about what medical professions around there, or as it is at the moment, going onto the internet And if you're in that kind, I always sort of think if you're in that kind of mind where you're going on the internet, you can scare yourself because you think you may have an itch that you've been had a bite from an ant, and before you know it, you think you've got some cancer or some toxin from. So this is the fear of it. But I think direct access between a medical professional, someone with knowledge, and me as a sovereign being, I think is just that one step could transform a lot of things, because I think in that little step between the middleman and where we are right now, it holds a lot of weight. It holds the pharmacy industry. It holds a lot of things, which when you start to look into each one of those ones, you start to realize that they're almost, and I don't know, again, whether it's a ploy or whether they knowingly are doing, that's another debate, or maybe it's a debate we want to get into now, but there's a lot of damage they're doing to human beings, whether it's a pharmaceutical industry, whether it's the food industry, and they're all doing it. And it's not that little gap in between, that middleman gap, where we don't know the knowledge. That was just my thoughts on it. So I don't know how that ties into how you're thinking from someone who's on a actually in the profession of healing.
There's nowhere to hide. Maybe that's why I've kind of moved towards, I've spent half of my career in surgery, because it doesn't get any more real than that. You can't hide behind any facade. You either can help perform that surgery correctly and have a good outcome, or not. There is no hiding. It's as real as it gets. And then the flip side of that is being with people that are in the last moments of their life, or even just terminal illnesses in general. That type of human, all the stuff that doesn't matter just doesn't exist in their world anymore. And I've learned a lot from those moments. And I think a lot of people are just afraid of, I've been a hypochondriac myself, and we're afraid of our own bodies. We're kind of afraid of our environment, and I think that's part of the healing process. Is we all kind of have to not be afraid of of life.
Yeah, but I mean, I've always thought this, Travis, and I think you see it from many different angles in life. There's a lot of things to implode that, to implant that fear process. I mean, that's what all media drives upon: fear, which then drives the internal anxiety. And then again, I mean, all the, as I was just trying to tap into, the pharmaceutical industry, the food industry, all these things, whether they're knowingly doing or not knowingly doing it, that's the whole discussion itself. But they are causing damage to the human being, and it's making us weak, and it's not making us fulfill our potential. And this is where I see technology. I think technology is on, as it is, it's on a more exponential rise, and I think if we can grab hold of that, it can drag us away from this, making us weak, and we can start to more knowledge and inevitably as well. And as someone who works, as you do in the medical industry, technology is just transforming everything around us anyway. So we have to utilize it.
Yeah, no, the less friction that we have in connecting with each other as humans, the less dependent we are on that third party. It makes me think of the book Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. He talks about how the brain is really, it isn't who you are, it's just a tool that's supposed to be used. But it, for a lot of people, it takes over. And how it does that is it keeps you in the past or in the future, because it doesn't exist in the now. So the less friction you have to connect, I think the more you can kind of put that tool down. And that's an interesting dichotomy, because at one end we have the technological advancement going on, but then also where we're living more in the moment than the now and connecting with each other and being more human. So it's really kind of exciting time, I think, to be alive. And it is interesting you brought that up.
Oh, I often say, Travis, I think these are the greatest days to live in, and I do sort of think we're living through Renaissance times, and I think, like all Renaissance times maybe in the past, but most people don't realise it around them. But one of the things that I sit and I do contemplate a lot, and I try to sort of foresee a world where the safe network does start to become or systems like this, the general decentralization of the world. And I sort of I think, I said this before, and I'm fascinated to have what you think about this. But I consider myself, I think, well, how are future generations going to remember us? You know, when they look back and think, you know, look what we're doing to our kids, Travis. I mean, let's get real about this. I mean, we're drugging loads of kids with Ritalin, as we call it over here, and all these drugs just because they're misbehaving and because it doesn't fit cultural norms. And these are horrific things that are going on, and that's because parents are just being pushed into these things because they don't know the knowledge. And that's what I'm trying to say about the breaking of the middleman, because these aren't just fanciful terms to me. This is why I think the real potential of the safe network is going to be, because it's going to transform lives, because it's going to give people the opportunity to understand this knowledge. And then, like I said, it can really transform lives, because when you start to look into numbers, it really, you know, it's something that I contemplate a lot. And I think, I don't know, man. I'll give you a quick sort of story. I went and did a few months when we lived in Venezuela, and we took some students around, and they would. And it's the first. This is like in 2000, and it was the first time I come across Ritalin, and they were all sent over from Denmark because it was like drop you in the countryside, and let's see, you know, because they're obviously troublemakers and all this. Anyway, the long story short was that all of them apart from one were on Ritalin, which we didn't know at the time. Anyway, there came a period, because of where we were, because we were so isolated, they run out of their medication, and seeing 17 kids having 2 weeks coming off Ritalin with no idea. They've been on this stuff since they were 5. They didn't know what was going on. And I tell you, and it scared the living crap out of me, Travis. I was like, whoa. And then I think there's a whole generation of kids like this. And this is what scares me about the middleman. And that's why I think it's important. And the transformative, the revolutionary point, I don't want to even use the revolution because I don't like that word, but the transforming power of the safe network, of dissolving that middleman, could just transform society in such a dramatic way. That's just my opinion from where I stand as a layman. I'm fascinated to know what you think of this as a medical person.
Yeah, no, you see it. You know, I have a 4-year-old, and for about 2 years now, my family we live a no refined sugar lifestyle, and what first cued me into it is we're sitting at the store, and he was 2 at the time, and I noticed all the candy. I don't know if it's like that where you live, but all the stores, grocery stores, gas stations, they've got all the candy down at his height. So literally, I couldn't walk anywhere without him grabbing at things. Here, I want this, I want this. And I just realized there's no candy up here where I can grab it. It's all down at his level. And that was an obvious attempt. You know, my bachelor's in psychology, and so you understand conditioning of the brain and those neural pathways. And he already at 2 years old was exhibiting some of those symptoms of ADHD, of just being hyperactive and everything, but it was real just kind of random. Then I started making the association of when he was drinking 100% orange juice, all natural, but about 15 minutes after he was drinking orange juice, that behavior of, you know, you couldn't talk to him, he wouldn't speak English and screaming, and as soon as I made that connection, I threw out every bit of sugar we had in the house, and we've never had any since. And then I did more research, and I've been in medicine for a long time, and it's amazing what I didn't know. And it makes you angry, but at the same time, the last couple of years been very healing for me. You know, a lot of that just anxiety and fear just goes away, because sugar is pure poison. And so, and there's a lot of poisons we're exposed to. And I think that helps contribute to keeping us in a state of fear, anxiety, and not connecting with each other and living in the now. So, I think having that frictionless network of humans all over the world, it's really exciting to see what that's going to do.
Well, yeah, and that's why I kind of, like you said, I think the theme of this whole conversation is going to be about healing, because one of the things that's going to happen is that there's going to be a lot of people that are going to need a lot of healing. You know, they're going to, like you said, we've got to wean ourselves off a lot of things that are bad for us, as this meat machine that we carry around. You know, like you said, whether it's sugar, whether it's all these, like I said, with all the powerful drugs that people are being put on, that they're just, and it's all going to need healing. These, you know, and this is you know why I think these discussions are going to have to be had, because I think personally I think there's a lot to be learned from other cultures and other ways and how we can learn from these things. And that's why I think the safe network and the general decentralization, or the frictionless communication, can only be a beneficial thing, because we need to learn, understand, and have more knowledge. And that's why I think the more knowledge we can all gain, it's only going to be a beneficial thing, because we need to fine-tune our human machines, because, as I said, technology is just on an exponential rate, and you know, and we need to keep ourselves up with it, because it's not going to slow down at any point for us and say, well, we'll wait for you to catch up and learn to wean yourself off sugar. It's just going to march on. We've got to keep up. So these are the fascinating things. But as I say, we're talking about things that aren't even launched yet, so it's or even in the very early stages. But these are discussions that I think we need as a human race to really start discussing, because there are going to be some big hangovers from the time that we're living in now. And I think one of the biggest hangovers is going to be the addictions that we're all addicted to, whether it's sugar, whether it's the pharmaceutical drugs, whether it's so many things, that it's going to take us a lot of healing to get over that.
Absolutely. Yeah, and there is great value in seeing how cultures interact. And I've had the, you know, I guess the privilege of practicing medicine in other parts of the world as well. I spent 5-6 weeks in Thailand studying malaria, avian flu, whatnot, and you know, just seeing how they deal with tuberculosis there. Here, everything's subatmospheric pressure, masks, everything there. They've just got a fan, windows open, you know, and it's pretty much just as effective. And you know, even though I probably can't consciously say, well, I learned this in Thailand, I'm going to do it this way, but you know, those things seep in, and you know, having exposure to different walks of life and how they approach things and thinking, there's just only positive and value there for sure.
Well, these are the other side effects. I spend a lot of time contemplating, you know, how things could be, you know, envision the future sort of thing. And I think at the moment, you know, the collective madness that we all do as human beings, which is getting into cars, driving into cities, sitting in offices, working on machines, going home, and all doing this within a time constraint, I think that will just be seen as madness in 20 years' time. I think they look back at us and go, what were you doing? You know, we can all connect now on machines. And these are I think once you do that, and this is one of the differences, as you know, from your time in Thailand, one of the things you notice, and I think when people always say to me, oh, what's the biggest difference you saw between living on the other part of the world to where you are now? And the one thing was their mindset and their time. When they're not running around trying to chase jobs and put times on it, everything slows down, and therefore you just generally see a lot more healthier people. Now, obviously, these people they're not superhumans; they're still affected by diseases, and there's no such thing as the noble tribesman. That doesn't exist. But their mindset and their way of life is a lot more calm, and their well-being is a lot higher. I just generally noticed, and that's definitely the difference I see between our culture, which is so fast-paced and all about, you know, trying to get yourself out of the bucket, and everyone's just grabbing each other and pulling each other down, and then the other life is just like, well, we live amongst nature, we know, we understand, and they start to live. And I think the other one as well, which is, again, I think it's another little kind of white elephant in the room, as much as it's mindset and all that and living in nature, it's coconuts. Coconuts is a big thing, and I know you know a lot about coconuts, but I think those people, because it's one of the things they live on the seaside, you know, by the beach and by the sea, coconuts grow there because that's how nature does, and coconuts do wonders for you. And you're not from a medical perspective, but you see a lot of just natural people living it and eating it, and they don't know the understanding of it. Now, again, tell me more about it, because I've only just recently understood the benefits of coconut oil.
Well, yeah, probably the most fascinating part of coconut oil that I've found is medium chain triglycerides, or I guess most people know it as MCT oil. You know, it's a very powerful anti-inflammatory. People that suffer from epilepsy and other neurologic issues have been dealing, you know, are pretty knowledgeable of it. But it's pure energy, and it's fat. It's the good kind of fat that we need. It tells us that we're full. It helps so we're not craving carbohydrates and sugar. and it's an anti-inflammatory on a systemic level. So it helps combat diseases such as high blood pressure, diabetes, autoimmune disorders, osteoarthritis, what I kind of see and treat most now. It's all kind of it's related. And so MCT oil particularly, it's a pretty powerful substance. I recommend it to a lot of my arthritic patients, that we're doing total joint replacements on.
Right.
And it's all from a natural base. And you look at these other cultures in medicine in Thailand, their dual national form of medicine is actually massage therapy. And their basic school for that is 4 years. And there's nothing like a Thai massage. It's very therapeutic. You get these natural therapies. They're very tactile. It's with humans connecting, and people that are able to heal versus, there's a lot of great things on Western medicine, but it's very impersonal. And that here's a pill, and just go talk to somebody else and figure out how it works. And 5 minutes, we're done. It's just the complete opposite. So I think somewhere in the middle there is potential for improvement for sure.
Yeah, and again, I mean, like I said, I mean, it's all about knowledge, Travis. And one of the things when we lived on the in Venezuela, when we lived down there on the beach, one of the things that, like I said, not only oil. And again, I just thought maybe this was just a local weird thing, but then I started seeing that people in Japan started doing this, and it's quite common around the world. He's drinking of seawater, and then they would all swear by it every day. He'd go and take a little sip of seawater, swill it around, and they would swear by it. And then now I mean, I don't know whether that was. And you start seeing they do this in Japan, and old people are living off islands, and they're doing this. But that's what I'm saying. What I'm trying to say is, this is just information that's not given. Now, going back to the coconut oil, as you mentioned it, is that just generally? It's one of the questions I've been discussing with a few people in my circle. Is that only in coconut oil, or is that because most if you go to supermarkets here, you'll find coconut milk, you'll find coconut juice, which is but coconut oil. Really, you find it as most supermarkets. You do find it will be as an oil that you rub on your skin. So again, is that only from that oil, or is it all coconuts or any coconut product?
17% of coconut oil is MCT oil. Also, palm oil is another common source for it. I prefer the 100% just MCT oil, where they extract it out through. There's a couple of different ways of extracting it, and there's some that are okay for the environment, and some that aren't. So you kind of have to look at that. But I just go for the straight MCT oil and tend not to use coconut oil other than for lotion and whatnot for the skin. It comes in all different forms. But that's the trouble is, you can't patent natural things that grow, and I think that's why it gets a lot less attention, but still survives generation after generation. You see these modalities of therapy continuing on, but that's a way where we can all do a little bit in gaining knowledge in the natural ways and not have to have a company support it through capital. Will be much help. I would love a world like that for sure.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's why I'm fascinated about the whole, the health safe or the safe network and how that will implement itself into our. And I don't even think the word medical is the right word. I think the word, it's not. I think it's a really good way to describe it. Is biohacking, or how we control the machines that we operate. Because it frustrates me so much, Travis, is that there's so much information that is just. As you'll know, I mean, I don't want to put you in any position where you're not saying, but you'll know as much as me. You can definitely understand this. That a lot of the information given out there, it's just basically who's got the most money to spend, and then because it's just that, and that's just given, and then you start to realize that's what I'm saying, and like I say, I mean, I think it's these areas are very, that's why we've spent a lot of time on this podcast over the last year discussing it on and off. It's about And this is where it comes. It really hits you in real life when you start to hear that many men over here, men particularly, are committing suicide, and then you realize how many of them are on some sort of drug that's been given to them. And you think, this was never needed. This was just because it was a simple solution. Do you know what I mean? And that's why I'm fascinated, because I think we can just, like I say, dissolve these middlemen, and people realize, because I don't think people. I think to be personally honest, I think you hear a lot of people talking about the big money's the problem, and bankers are problems, and the wars are problems, and they are. They're some of the great big elephants in the room. But one of the ones that we never look at is the pharmaceutical industry, and just how easy and how controlling and how much influence they have on society around us, and then how much damage that can do. And when we're all, like you said, in the process of trying to heal ourselves, you know what I mean? And people, when they're, this is what I find frustrating about it. When people are in need, they go to someone, to a doctor, and they ask for help. They want that doctor to give them a true prescription. And and there's so many instances when the doctor is basically just being told what pharmaceutical drugs to give them, because that's how they make money, and that's just not right. And I'm sure there's so many doctors that don't want to say this stuff. And again, maybe that's where it's going to. Again, we'll mesh into the Safe network. We will have a lot more doctors to be able to come out and say, now I can really speak the truth about a lot of things. I don't know. I mean, I'm just fascinated by all these areas.
Doctors are in a tough position, particularly here in the U.S. By the time they graduate, on average, they're in debt $250,000. So when you have that much debt hanging over you, and you've invested already that much of your life, I can only imagine the amount of pressure and really loss of control of how they practice their craft. And then you add in that we're supposed to use electronic medical record system, but they're so complex and unsafe, and we're responsible for being the caretaker of our patient's information, then inevitably you've got to shell out even more money to just get things running at a bare minimum. And so now I've spent all of my time and resources and focus on money, but then everything else except for the person that's in front of us and that we're supposed to be there to heal. And there's just the amount of friction that is, and that's even without talking about the licensing and the certification and proper training and protection for patients. It's enough to wear any provider down. And there probably isn't a month that goes by that a couple times that month I think about, well, why am I doing this to myself? Why do I put myself and my family under so much stress to try to heal someone when it feels like everything is working against me to actually do that and do it right? And I have the benefit that I didn't graduate with a lot of debt, and I only have a master's degree in medicine, and I'm always collaborating with a physician that tends to take on a little bit more of the final responsibility. And so I'm in a unique position where I can kind of live in both worlds. I don't have as much stress. And so, hopefully HealthSafe they won't have to pay for that secured medical record system. They won't have to be the caretaker of patient information, because the patients will be able to store their own information. They'll be able to take back and have ownership over their data, their personal information, which I think is some of the most sacred information out there. And that alone, I think, will change this current dynamic between provider and patient. That take all that stuff away, we can get back into the now and really kind of do what healers want to do, and that's to heal people.
Exactly, and I think that's what I say to her. I think I fear for people that when they look, the future generations are going to look back and think, why did you ever live in a world or allow people to stop them having? I think it's. I mean, I'm now in my 40s, Travis, and I've had this thought ever since I was, in my early teens, thinking, what right does anybody have to hold my medical records? I can't see, but they can see, but I can't. That's, to me, it's struck me ever since I was a teenager, and I'm now in my 40s. So, I think it's just, I can't see any justification for it. And I just think there should be no justification to it. Exactly, and that's what excites me about the whole of that project, what you're saying, because that to me should be a number one fundamental. I should have the information that involving me as a person. That should just be, without even going without saying, that should be that moment we all get.
Yeah, it when you think about it, it's a simple concept that just makes sense. You take that out of the equation. That alone, I think, will have the biggest positive impact that I can do for the world. Because as a provider, I don't want to be the caretaker responsible for my patient's data, but we don't have a system in handing it back over to them. I'm not sure how we ended up with it. If you look at the Hippocratic Oath, that's one of the main things included is to keep things secret. And we can't do that with our current system. And I don't think, given the choice, there's not very many providers out there that wouldn't happily give that control back over to the patient. And I think we'll still have access to it, but having it just dictated and controlled fully by the patient, and they dictate on access, that will instantly, without having to change anything else, I think can get us on the path of healing that bond between healer and wounded or ill person.
Well, that's why I'm fascinated to see, because I see this as like a lot of the things on the, it's all about power of networks, and I immediately I can start seeing, well, that the health safe fills a void, a very we just said one of the most fundamental voids, and on top of that you can start being like, if I had that access, think, oh well, no, great, that's me as a user. I've now got my access to my records. The next one I would definitely want, which I think would be building up on the back of that health safe network, would be doctors who go, right, okay, you can talk to me, and you can pay me in Safecoin for X amount of time. And I would love that as a user, going, oh, I don't want to be stuck, like I said at the beginning, I don't want to be stuck with my local doctor who's just in my local village because that's where he's always been. I'd rather talk to someone and maybe get two opinions and use my Safecoin to, and I can see this is a blossoming network of so many providers all collecting around that whole network, because I'm fascinated to see how that's going to, that ecosystem will grow.
Yeah. Video is, that's our biggest limitation. It's totally possible. You and I are doing video conferencing right now, but to store all that data, that's dangerous. Having that much, the actual video of, let's say, that communication of, provider and patient, having that get open to the world in the way that the patient doesn't want, that would be pretty destructive and detrimental. But once that's not an issue and people have ownership over their information and dictate how it's shared, and there is no finite limit to the amount of data you can store, that's pretty exciting, and that'll easily be integrated in to the system that I've been working on.
That's, I mean,
working on.
The only concern I'd have, Travis, would be some what I'm sure, like you said, all the providers that would love to give their information away. What happens to the person who lives in a particular place and the doctors and say, no, we're not going to give your stuff away? How would, that's what I'm saying. How does that would frustrate me as a user. Say I was living in a my area around here, and they were saying, no, we're not going to give you information to the safe network. We want to keep it to ourselves. Is there any way of me as a patient finding out that back door in them? I mean, how do I overcome that step?
Well, right there, that will reveal the intentions of that person that you're looking to heal you or to help out, or that you're reaching out for support. Mm-hmm. Boy, if they're trying to use your personal information to keep you hostage and seeing them and not going somewhere else or anything, that I think makes it just instant. Bringing that kind of light onto that instantly shows their agenda and where they're coming from. And, the shift from our current system to a system where it's patient driven and patient controlled, it's going to come from the patients. And so, providers will have a very quick choice to make. You either, provide what your patients demand and what they need, because that is the main component of healing is, you have to figure out what individual people need and to see how you can help them achieve what they need to heal and move forward. So it's going to come from patients, because right now, medical information, medical data, it's totally being held hostage by people that have never taken care of anybody in their life.
Well, and I think, and I mean, and not only that, I don't know how I can only speak. I can only speak what I see in where what the existences in the places I've been in. So I'm not trying to generalize for the whole world at all, or even America in any way. But I mean, the other thing again, which is the dual side of this, is I personally have had I've gone to go and ask for some of my medical records, and they just disappeared. And I'm like, well, wait a minute, whoa. First of all, you had no right to even tell me I couldn't see them, and then I go and ask for them, and they've disappeared. What do you mean they've disappeared? They've lost them all. And you think, I think the security side is the other dual big thing, because I don't want my records being lost. That's vital information.
Well, it makes me chuckle a little bit. We have the exact same problem here. I mean, still today. And, I'll go to call for records and stuff, and, I'll never be able to get them, and it's, that stuff happens, and it shouldn't. And it's just, and that's being able to where the patient is in control and has access to all of their information. That's the way to do it, for sure. As a provider, if I create a document or contribute in some way in creating personal health information, then I should have access to what I create forever. But the patient, that whoever you're creating something for, let's say a medical document, they should have forever access to that. Absolutely. And how we don't have that system and haven't, and even as our medical record systems, everything get better, how we haven't done that first, just, is mind-boggling.
Well, and I think one of the other things,
in the US, we're already over a third of our entire population here in the US have had our personal health information breached. So we're over 120 million people have had their personal health information breached. And the only reason we know that is since 1996, they've had to report, it's a federal law, you have to report any breach on your system that is involved 500 or more people or your patients. So, that's just the ones where there's 500 or more that have been breached. So that doesn't count all the ones where it's just a few here and there. And then you add in who has access to these medical record systems. Insurance companies, which in a lot of ways, it almost feels like here at least, they've turned into just a billing mechanism. So a lot of what I document, what I chart and everything is really to satisfy a coder biller that has never taken care of anyone. But they're telling me how I need to document and keep that mental history. It's dysfunctional for me. And so that's why I want to utilize a powerful thing like the Safe Network to change my environment and how I'm able to interact with patients.
Well, and I think one of the other, it's not going to be too long before this is going to transform the whole medical industry. Is the ability with, obviously, as the Safe Network grows, the more computing power it has, and then you can spend some of that resources to switch into that supercomputing power. Now, as I know, and I've had a few sort of conversations with a few scientists, and they tell me ballpark figures of how much it is to get online, even just to buy the time to use a supercomputer is absolutely phenomenal amounts. And so your average someone like you who may not know knowledge, man, you're going to be able to access some very powerful computing stuff and then again refine the healing process. So you're not just giving them a blanket, well, there's a headache, take the white pill. It can be like, we can really fine tune this, and that's going to be immense powerful tool for the medical profession, surely.
Absolutely. I find myself watching a lot of TED TV now, and Boy, what I've learned about microbes and the future of that. I mean, it's completely against my whole thought process and use of antibiotics. And when you're first out of school and you first see it, and I started out in transplant surgery where people, their immune systems are severely compromised, and antibiotics you perceive as just your lifeblood and keeping these patients alive. And but watching these TED TVs and microbes and how actually outcomes of patients that have intestinal transplants are better if you leave the stool and the bacteria and microbes in the transplant, and how they have less rejection and less infections, and it's just complete opposite of what you would think. And so having it where you have that processor power and you're able to get some good, solid, objective data that hasn't been skewed or, created in a way that follows funding into maybe 6 corporations for the whole world that are really supplying all the funding for research and stuff. But actually having we're all participating, taking and giving, I think that data is going to have a lot more value to it for sure.
Well, that's what I say, and I think one of the, it's the power of networks, because I think this is why it excites me so much about the Safe Network is the networks of networks all connecting, and I can sort of say, and again, I'm just I just a normal guy just trying to gain as much knowledge as possible, and you already hear right now that they're doing stem cell growing, growing parts of the bodies in China, and you think all this innovation that's going on all around the world. And that's what I love about the Safe Network. I think if you can just put these people on a network where they got all the freedom, and then they could connect with the medical people and go, because I honestly feel this, Travis. I can't see, unless we hit by an asteroid or we all wipe ourselves out, the next 20 years is going to look a lot different. We're going to go through some absolutely fundamental, especially in the medical area, because we've already got then they're talking about nano machines, you're talking about stem cells, you're talking about so much innovation going on. And that's what I love about the Safe Network. I think if we can connect these people where there's no barriers, and I think one of a perfect example of the barriers is something I'm just mentioning then, stem cells. I mean, the whole idea that the whole of that kind of knowledge was stifled just because of a middleman coming in and saying, oh, well, because of the original argument about abortions and babies and whether they held that whole argument back. And now you're understanding what that's beneficial to us. And this is what I'm trying to say. We can just cut away all these middlemen. We can stop these people putting barriers in the way of knowledge, and we can advance and become what we ultimately are going to have to become, because that, like I say, technology is advancing. It's going to give us more and more solutions, and we better keep up.
Absolutely. No, yeah, stem cells is a perfect example of that. I think why there has been so much negative discussion on that is really there's been no way to synthetically create it. And it's still a natural process that we all carry. Interesting enough, the highest concentration of stem cells is in our fat, and compared to bone marrow, it's maybe 1/10 of the concentration of stem cells. And why? But you never hear about that. Yeah, you hear about it being harvested from babies and placentas and whatnot. But you don't even need to get stem cells from anybody else. Amniotic fluid is a common one, and I've used it a little bit and seen some pretty mixed results, and I'm just blown away that we don't have more research on that. And my only thought on that is because you can't patent it, you can't trademark it. And so if there is a viable way that people that are interested in those things and need funding and support, it's just following the same format that all the open source community has been doing. There's a lot that you can learn from open source software development. It's the same for medicine, and unfortunately, we've just kind of been trademark and the quick buck route, and we're paying for it now. But there's hope, and discussions like this definitely give me a lot of hope.
Well, yeah, this is the thing. When the very rationale, I mean, like behind N99 is that you give the people who are creating, and you give them the resources. The same principle could work with a medical, and that's what I'm saying. Is we haven't got to say to some guy who's really pushing the edges of innovation about medical science, or you've got to give that up and do some sort of hippy dippy cause where you're doing it for the better beneficial. No, you can be rewarded for that, and instead of having to go through just working for a company and be given a yearly wage, you can earn infinite more resources because you are the brains of the central nervous system. You don't have to give that middleman the power, and that's what I think is going to transform everything.
Yeah, and I speak for myself, and I'm a provider. I would likely, if I woke up tomorrow and I was told and felt pretty confident that I could follow my passion and go research a plant and see how that could help people, I would do it tomorrow. But what kind of keeps me from, I can only do so much, is, every year my licensing is going up, the taxes on me to even just be able to have the privilege to take care of people, just the amount of money and resources that it takes. And then the hours, I'm working on average the last 6 months, probably 70 hours a week. And just probably over 100, 150 people a week. And the amount of emotional toll and the effort it takes to balance that through yoga, meditation, exercise. It's I feel like I'm running on the wheel all the time. And if I had support and to help me kind of pursue some things that other people agreed might benefit them, I would do it in a second. I would.
Well, I think this is I'm fascinated about this whole dichotomy that we're discussing, because I don't know whether a lot of the sickness that we express as ourselves right now is to do with the environment we're living in. Is this all this is an expression, like I said before, the food we're eating, the pills we're swallowing, the lifestyle we're living, and if you could just change just the little things, it would transform. This is what I passionately think. I think if we can just transform the little things, and instead of doing these fundamental, control elements and this all trying to micromanage, we just take away the little things that hold up, and I think it would transform. Because, as I say, I just think it's the small things that would transform us, and then you wouldn't need as many people to help. I mean, ultimately, the person, I want to live in the world, Travis. We don't need people like you. We don't need healers. We don't need them because we're all.
Great. Yeah, you're right. No, that is an interesting thought. I think we need to just put down the tools that have kept us alive, like fear. And thinking we're separate and everything, but, putting those tools down, living in the now and seeing that ourselves, our bodies, the people in our world and our earth are all the same. We're all connected. And if there's not a balance between those three things, it makes life a lot more difficult, and you need a lot more healers. Boy, and so the more aware we can get in seeing that we're all connected, and if you hurt one part of that, if you hurt one part of us, whether it's your earth or your neighbor or yourself, there's no balance, and you can't move forward with life. You can't live.
Yeah, and that I mean, not only just works in a physical way, and I think this is, and I think this is going to be more of a currency of the future, if you mean. I think the currency of how the will you give out to people, how you treat other people, how you respect her, not only just are you going out and like the physical, you're harming people, but how do you treat people? That's how your networks build. That's how these are the things that, because we become so suckled to this big beast of the state, and it's kind of like, well, that will take care of you, and we've become detached away from nature, and I know you know that, because that's the whole point. When you go to places like Thailand, you realize how detached we are from the rock that we live on.
Yep. Yeah, we're detached from what gives us the most life and the most energy, and is our power source. And so, the more we can let go of what we think keeps us life and what will make us happy, and move towards things that really are eternal, like your neighbor, our own bodies, and our environment and world. Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah,
And start yourself, and so that's, the medicine's one part of it, but and the health safe, and the other project I'm working on is I don't know, I'm still playing around with the title, but it's calling it the PTTP protocol, the power to. So I drive an electric car. I've had solar panels on my house for about a year, and so I don't pay for power anymore. And boy, I had a lot of naysayers that said, "Oh, it's too expensive. You can't do that." So I disproved them on that. Oh, it's no, it's really not something that really works. And I have had, knock on wood, zero problems with it. I often forget I even have solar panels for my whole house. And now a vehicle, I don't pay for any gas. I drive to work, plug it in, and drive home. But I want to take it a step further and create where you have a roadside. So I do Airbnb as well, where I rent out part of my house. And so I want to, gosh, I have this electric charge station. I want to share that with our guests that come and visit us. Well, actually, I want to heal my neighborhood and community. So I'm going to put a charge station right street side. People will be able to come up, and it'll start off just donation, and there'll be a little QR code with the either safe or whatever it is. And since I already have that station there, might as well make it a street light and have it run off solar panels that, that whether it's the solar panels for the roads and for the sidewalk, or the solar panels just on the houses, which I've got. But since we have a street light and an electric car, the electric vehicle charge station, and if we're doing about every, a street light could be every house, boy, that's a perfect setup for a mesh network. So why not just throw a mesh node in there as well? And so now you've just offered to your community, and I will be able to do that because it's powering from the sun, and I'll make money through farming. You can even throw a safe network farm in there, and that'll power it enough where I don't need to charge. I don't need to demand a currency before I can share my resource. It'll be, we're all really connected. So now my goal is my neighborhood will have an opportunity for free power, free fuel for their vehicle, and they'll have free internet, broadband, and the exponential power of mesh versus everything being used through a central controlling third party. It'll be, we're all connected. We all take a part in that. And, I think it's actually possible.
Well, I think if we go any further, Travis, without disclosing the exact location you're at, I don't know. That's not the point. But you're not living in some hippy dippy land, man. You are living in a metropolitan. This is what's inspiring to it, because you're doing this in real life. You're not doing it in some hippy dippy community somewhere. So
no, I'm smack dab in a pretty good sized metropolitan city, and I'm a little bit in the suburbs. I'm more of a city person. I call myself a city rat, but since having children and getting married, you have to make compromises in life, and so I'm, I guess, in the suburbs, but it's still pretty darn metropolitan. And it's I first got a lot of looks, the solar panels, the electric car, and all this, but boy, it's just, now I don't drive daily. I don't go out on drive at least and not see at least one or two electric vehicles now every day. And just, and I'm in just average Joe neighborhood, and I'm very lucky. I know I live a lot better than most, but I'm not wealthy. I'm not, I don't have endless resources. I don't have a family that takes care of everything for me. I've kind of had to build everything myself, and with my family and friends that I do have, but nothing special, and it can be done. Yeah, for sure.
So I mean,
question. Sorry, I get lost.
No. This is so inspiring, Charlie. I think one of the things that I would love to see was, I mean, whether it's yourself, and I mean, you'll be the perfect person to. You should put a video up on how to do this step by step. Giving people around that, a step by step. This is what you need to buy. This is where you need to go and get it. This is where I recommend you do it. This is how you start. Now, one of the things that I'm fascinated to know what you're doing, and it's so inspiring to hear that people around you were really, initially as they were, but they eventually got hold of it and they started to participate in this. My question has got to be to you: have you had any blowback from the power company? Have they come back to you and said, "Oh, what are you doing?" And have they tried to say give you incentives? I mean, what's their position with you?
So currently, I use the power company as a kind of a battery backup. So when the sun isn't shining, I'm not generating power. I'm using them as a battery. And to have that connection, I pay $9 a month. And, that's been more than reasonable. So I haven't really pursued going the next step with the battery because, the batteries technology is getting there. And I think with lithium iron phosphate batteries, they're much better for the environment, but they're still expensive, and that really limits things. But just now this year, it's interesting you mentioned that because the power company is now saying, well, our funding is going down, and Warren Buffett is the one that owns our power system here, and so now they're discussing a tax for solar panels. But that's the there's freedom in choice. I think that's what freedom is choice. And I have my personal limits. If they demand too much from me, then I choose and I will disconnect and I will just put batteries up. And so it wouldn't matter what they tax or do in there. I just, if they push me too hard, I'll just not participate with their system. And they understand that. And so, our ability for just an average Joe like myself to go on and research how to do that and to be able to just put it together with, I work in medicine. I'm not an expert in any of those things, but just being able to have access to that information, if I can do it, anybody can for sure.
I'd imagine one of the side beneficial things must be, it must have, the links between and the connections between the community that you're talking about must have grown a lot stronger. I mean, that's one of the side benefits of it. Not only are they using a more renewable energy, but I imagine the personal connections between people, because they're all doing. It's that inspiration of doing it yourself. You're not having just to rely on someone else, and which then I've personally always seen is it builds connections. I don't know if it's the same way where in this where you are, what they're doing, but that's something I've always witnessed. I think
it's part of healing. And all these things, I did for selfish reasons. I realized I needed to work on myself. I needed to live a life that I felt proud about, and I wanted to build a future that I could be proud about handing off to my child. And so all those things really just started off with me trying to better myself and to heal myself. I think we're all born and raised with a lot of trauma. And it's just now recently, and with this that other people really actually do see value in that, and they're making changes, and what I've done has had a positive effect. I don't know if you can start out creating a project just to benefit other people and to change. You can't. Whenever I've tried to force my own thoughts and, hey, if you do it this way, it's better, it's never been that productive. People immediately just kind of shut you off. And what the way I have to do it is, okay, I'll follow what I feel is right. And if that's when people start to a second thought, where they'll first be very they'll ignore it, or even some with the sugar thing particularly. Boy, our family was quite upset, and they took offense to it that we were not eating the foods that were available at family dinners and whatnot. But a couple of years later now, boy, a lot of people in my family don't eat sugar. A lot of they're eating gas cars, natural gas cars or electric cars, or it's just amazing. Yeah, it has to start though. I think you have to start healing yourself first. before you can really affect your community. That's been just a secondary thing. But we have a good community.
Yeah, that's. I mean, I can't. I don't want to escape this. So while you just mentioned it, I mean, what you mentioned that, the anti-inflammatory life, and you talk about that, and sugar was a big one that kept coming up with it. And as I was saying to you before we went live, that we're often told a lot about sugar, and people just, and from the media, it's like, eat lots of sugar makes you fat, so don't do it. But when what's going on when we're actually, what is the, when you say anti-inflammatory life, what is that what's actually happening at a molecular level that is the damage that sugar is doing? Because I think once you realize that, I think it really does enlighten the whole process of what that sugar does. So, man, you know more than me, so please enlighten us.
The easiest way to think about it is if you have a food allergy, and if you've ever known anyone or seen anyone that's had a food allergy, if they're exposed to that, they swell up, they get red, they panic, they can't breathe. That is on a very dramatic, that's a dramatic display of what happens at a much more subtle level that's over decades. There's everyone is allergic to sugar. It's a poison. Well, hold on a sec, sorry.
It's all right, no, that's cool, man, don't worry.
I got these dogs. I didn't realize my dogs were sitting here in the kennel.
That's cool, man.
Nice to be in there. So with sugar, it's, there's studies that show it's 8 times more addictive than cocaine. And I'm almost convinced at this point that the people that are pushing sugar and putting it in everything, they understand that. And I think it's one of the most dangerous substances out there. And it blows my mind that, we feed it to our kids. Even in formula, they're putting sugar. But then we're very crazy and restrictive on many other things that I think are a lot less dangerous. But those are, people spend the rest of their life in prison for, it's mind-boggling. I don't understand it. But sugar, the physiologic effects, yes, it makes you gain weight. But the World Health Organization attributes sugar to being the cause of 75% of chronic disease for all first world countries. So if you get rid of sugar, you get rid of 75% of chronic disease, which is diabetes, hypertension, autoimmune disorders, arthritis, just to name a few.
See, this is where it all becomes kind of like, when it gets down to sort of base knowledge of what Joe Average understands, it all becomes very confusing because, like one of the current guidances over here is not to drink any or have any fruit because that's got sugar in it. And I'm like, well, come on, man, fruit's been given to us by nature. We now saying we can't eat fruit because it's got sugar in it. I mean, this is what I'm saying. So, and I understand that this is, again, this is my very, please forgive me, Travis, I've got very kind of, as a layman's understanding of it. But as I understand it, that the sugar that's actually attached to fructose, it's the body can deal with that. But it's the refined sugar, and it's what that does on a molecular, and it breaks away and it starts to degenerate cells, and that's what causes the inflammation. Am I kind of in the right area? And that's the difference between eating natural fruit sugars compared to refined sugars.
Yeah, actually, fruit is an interesting one because fructose in itself, in the actual fruit that you're eating, because of the natural balance, it has fiber in it, and fiber controls on the absorption. So a lot of the damage that sugar does, which it's very toxic for the liver, because the liver is the first organ that deals with sugar, and so when you have fiber, it slows down that absorption. So the liver exposure is much steadier and doesn't cause as much stress or shock on it. So that's why, but as soon as you take, fiber doesn't store very well. It doesn't freeze. And so pretty much any fruit juice that you're going to buy in a store isn't going to have fiber in it. You can look at nutritional labels and see. I'm suspect, I guess that's the little bit of paranoid person in me, that they understand that when you have that surge, it's just like IV versus a pill for a drug. IV is much more harmful, and because you're having that huge shock on the system at just a much higher concentration. And that also is much more effective at creating addiction. And so I'm suspect that they understand that, and that's part of the reason why they take fiber out, is it hits that reward center and tell someone, oh boy, this is really good. This is what I need, and it's a trick. And I never tell people that they shouldn't eat fruit, because there are lots of valuable things with fruit, but the actual fruit, not some as soon as you try to add any special formula to it, extract it out, all this, then you lose some of that. And so, but then once again, what money is in just here's the fruit,
Well, it even gets more true than that, Travis, because I can't speak for where you live, but I go to my local supermarket down here, and I can be getting raspberries from New Zealand. I can be getting oranges from Spain. And you think, well, wait a minute, these are stored on boats. So okay, it's presented as fruit, but actually, what I'm actually eating, and I'm sure it's one of the things you taste. I've never tasted a mango as like I did when I was in Venezuela. I don't care. They put it on a boat and it doesn't taste the same. And I sort of think, well, that's maybe because I shouldn't be eating a mango in this part of the world. But this is what I'm saying. So we've all got, this is what I'm trying to say. It's all about knowledge, because if you just say to people, oh, take fruit, they just go and take fruit and they don't understand the process. It's like, everything. And this is why I think, to me, it's essential that we have as much an open and knowledge to everything, because when you really consider that, like I said, this is the whole point of what you call biohacking, is that this is a machine we operate. And you understand that a lot of the senses are coming in for our ears and for our eyes, which is okay. That's the medium, that's the world around us. We can do that. Then you realize about how a lot of the influences around you, the negative. Okay, you can deal with that. But people just forget how much shit we're just pouring down our throat, and it's just destroying us as human beings. And I think that's because they're just not knowledgeable and they don't understand, and they hear all this thing like, oh, you can't drink fruit. And I'll tell you what it is, and maybe it's a very English attitude or Scottish attitude or UK attitude, but people just become like, oh, whatever. I've heard it all. What's not going to give me cancer? What isn't going to? So then they just become lazy with it. And then do you know what I mean? And that's the trouble with having false general propaganda that's put out rather than actual truth and reason.
Yeah, and that's part of it. Is we don't watch live TV in our home. We don't watch commercials. And so a lot of it is that's maybe one part I have a hard time connecting with a lot of other people is their responses. And when I'm discussing that, it doesn't, I have a hard time connecting with them. And I think it's just that constant propaganda and consumerism of just buy. And so having a medium where we can share media, music and TV and theater and all of that, without then it being tied in with consumerism. If there's another way for these artists to make money and they don't have to sell out, I think it'll be a lot easier to really communicate, for people to discover really what's a much easier way to live. Because actually living healthy is easier, it's simplified. I don't have to worry about what's the next brand, or I got to go store to store looking for a specific brand of whatever. I just go and buy an apple, water. It's a lot less choices, and I'm happier from it. So, but part of it is I don't have exposure all day. I'm either on the computer working on some project, communicating with people, working in the OR, or if I am watching TV, it's I'm not watching commercials for that same. So I don't know. I think it's harder for other people. I don't.
It is, Travis, and it isn't, because I always think about it. Just we all fight the resistance of everything. Life and everything around us is to resist us in every way. And it works for I'm a creative person. trust me, man. It's not by coincidence that artists and creative people by the outside world are deemed as lazy. Because, man, anything that's going to switch me off from doing it, if you're in that frame of mind, yeah, TV's a distraction, music distraction. I'll take, there's a lot of distractions in this resistance going on, but that you don't have to. I think if you can fight the resistance from any other way, what I think is people are being told, this is why I think if we can get more direct frictionless information to people, they don't have to sort of think, to transform my life, it means me getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning, cycling for 10 miles, jogging for another. No, you don't. This is the thing. You can just do small changes in your life that transform your life. I mean, I remember and again, it's not something I would ever tell anyone to do, but I remember going, and it was an unfortunate circumstance that led me to it. But I didn't eat meat and it led from literally from a month to 16 years, and it transformed my life. Yeah. So and it didn't take, like you say, that's not me getting up every morning and you don't have to do any of that. You can just the incremental ones. But once you realise you do that, like you say, these are all, I think, steps. Once you start to take care of this meat machine, you start to think, like you say, I don't need that distraction of TV. I'd rather go out and take a walk in the countryside. I don't need that. I'd rather do this. And it helps. And you realise, and you look back and I've developed as a human being, and I haven't done any of these. Do you know I think it is? And I think it's the old adage that, again, it's try to become the superhero that you want to be. Be the hero of the film, man. You got the life. Be the hero in it. And you don't need to take gigantic steps. You haven't got to be Mr. You can just do the small things. And that's the element of biohacking I love. So I've talked about this. I mean, where did all your fascination with this come along? And, biohacking and what tips and recommendations would you have to people?
Oh, I think I've always just liked to fix things, whether it's a computer, taking it apart, putting it back together, solving some, fixing some software program, or humans, and taking them apart, putting them back together. All right. So, yeah. I don't know where I think that's just in my blood. It's in my DNA. I can't explain it. What was the second part of your question?
Yeah. No, basically, what recommendations would you give to people? I mean, that's what I've always said to people when we discussed this in this podcast. I think sometimes and I think this is, I mentioned this earlier on when we discuss about male depression. I think a lot of it is just basically just do something, whether it's digging a hole, drawing a picture, do something, because I think that's that's one of the tips I try to say to people. Look, just try to do something with anything, just positive momentum in anything. So that's what would you recommend to people out there? Because I know the people who will be listening to this, and I'm fascinated to hear what your answers are going to be.
That's the tricky thing, is for every one of us, we're unique, and so there is no one way to do that. I guess just in a general sense is, just get to know yourself, figure out what makes you tick and what your passion is, and not be afraid of what's under the hood. Look at yourself in the mirror. And when you find stuff that makes you feel good and it isn't harming the world, then kind of pursue that, figure out ways to do that. I'd say put more emphasis on yourself rather than looking outward, trying to find something to make you better. Look inward and figure out what you need first, and then look out in the world to figure out how to get it. And that's the great thing about the internet as it is even now. Once I figure out what I do need, then it's much easier to figure out how to satisfy that need.
Well, I think one of the biggest things about biohacking, and I think the biggest one that people can do is there was a TV program over here when I was a kid, Travis, and it was called why don't you? And the whole theme tune went, why don't you just turn off your TV set and go outside and do something better instead? And I think that is such an there's such a great statement for what we could all do, because do you know what I mean? I often say to people that, it's hilarious. I think it's hilarious that anybody sits in front of a TV in these days and watches all these adverts and stuff. But when you say to them, well, why do you do it? Oh, but it's so magical and it's so fantastic. And I think, go and dig up a square foot in front of your garden and study that for the rest of your life, and you'll be blown away. It will blow your mind, because we don't know anything. We're such unintelligent species, and this is what I'm saying. That's when you upgrade yourself and you start to realize, wow, there's so much I could around me to absorb, and I've only got a shorter space of time. So this is what give me anything that's going to give me some more awareness and intelligence to build that up, and that's what it's all about, I think.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. It's all about awareness, and that's part of getting to know yourself. Is I try to periodically do activities that turn my brain off. My personal secret weapon is yoga. I have a hard time turning off my brain with just straight meditation, but I just by accident through a friend, was exposed to yoga, and for me, just that movement and but then also working on quieting the mind at the same time, that combination just works perfect for me. And it's pretty amazing what can happen when you turn the brain off and you live in the now.
Well, yeah, I think I think that's one another, and I think, like I say, this is why I always say to people, it's the simple things, and I think it's sometimes I think one of the things that we can do an absolute wonder for the human mind is just going out in nature at times, and I mean that, going out in the cold. I mean, I cast myself fortunate to live enough into Scotland where we have seasons, because I've lived in parts of the world where it's just hot and sunny every day, hot and sunny, hot and sunny. And I love the cold. I love going out in the cold and or in the rain. And I think it's good to charge it. I mean, for that hasn't cost me any penny and any money. Hasn't cost me. I'd have to be fit. Anyone can go out in their back garden, stand outside, and take a deep breath and maybe look up at the sky and go, wow, and just to realize it, because it's amazing. Those small little things can transform your whole meat machine. Yeah.
Well, that would be an interesting thing. See, I grew up, I live in the mountains, kind of, it's a very massive mountains, the Rockies, and that's all I've ever known. I grew up with horses, and my father, boy, we spent as much time out camping and out in the wilderness than we did inside, and so I've always taken it for granted, and it's always a little bit entertaining when I'll take a friend out in the wilderness. I mean, we'll be well, I have to do the conversion, but we'll be 10,000 feet up in the middle of nowhere, where civilization is a couple hours away, and that's just home for me. I feel comfortable there, but seeing the anxiety, and one of my good friends, we were driving to our campsite, and it was pitch black, and I've been on this dirt road, dozens and dozens of times, so I didn't need I didn't need light, and there was no moon that night. It was pitch black, and we're going straight up this mountain, four-wheel drive. And I felt comfortable. I didn't need to see. I kind of knew every turn. But boy, she had a complete panic attack of just not having that reference. And I like that feeling of feeling so small in the world. And I ski, I snowboard, and part of, it's fun to ski and snowboard going down the hill, but I think it's just as much fun going up, because you're left on a little tiny chair suspended up way up in the sky in the top of 10, 11,000 feet, and you just feel so small. But then once you just let go and you're not fearful of that, and you just realize that you're part of it, it's and you don't fight it. I don't know. It's a powerful feeling. I love the outdoors. That's really, that can be a healing thing for sure.
Oh, I again, Travis, and I'll maybe I'll put a link up when I put this video on earlier on. But they've just there's some fascinating technology that works around this principle that sound and everything can be caught. You can catch an image through, basically just looking at an object, and then through sound you can record it. And I thought there's a definite resonance, and I've always thought this about mountains and water. I think you see in every culture, from all, if you go studying a lot of ancient texts and stuff, there's something about water and mountains, and I think it's all about resonance, because I think one of the things when you go, again, that's why I live in the Highlands.
Yeah, all right, yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I was saying it's no coincidence I chose to live in the mountains, because I think I think the one thing you find when I like to do it sometimes, I go out on my bike and I'll go right to, up, like I say, struggle up a mountain on my bike, but the silence, it's the sound, and it goes through you. And I tell you, you feel it. I don't know if it's just me, where I'm just sounding like a complete strange, weird person, but you can almost feel it going through you, this whole, all the noise and all the ripple breaks away, and all you're just left with is this silence, which is something you don't experience, and I think it's something that more people should experience. And it's not till you realize, like when I go back in and I get in the car and I travel down to England, I go into a city and I'm like, oh, whoa, this is all this interference we're talking about. But I say this because it's one of the things that sort of ties in with this, because you realize how much, Dave Asprey talks about it, how how much Wi-Fi interference has it, effects on our mind through our sleep and stuff. So I think this isn't just isn't just pie in the sky stuff. I think there is something definitely about place, rocks, water, and that's why I think hopefully cities will be hopefully will develop in time, because I think they're not good for the human species as a whole, personally. But that's so I feel.
Yeah. No. Yeah. There's a lot of. I mean, very few argue the powerful impact being out in the wilderness, even being alone and just being left with yourself and your own thoughts and the environment. No one argues how powerful that is, but there's lots of different explanations for it, and it would be great to have good, objective explanation of why that occurs. Pretty much universally, anyone that's out there in the wilderness alone, it's a unique experience.
Yeah, well, again, I think it's a very healing experience. I mean, it's like I said earlier on, I mentioned you earlier on, Travis, about these students we had over in Venezuela. But man, by the end of it, by the 3 months of it, they were healed human beings, because they suddenly realized, like, they were so fixated in their world about living in their little family, and then they suddenly went out and expanded their world, and they went up mountains and stuff, and they were like, now I realize, and they were healed human beings. It wasn't, and that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying I was a healer or anyone, but the experience healed them, getting back into nature. And I think if everybody just did it, don't go to, go out and really, like I say, experience nature, because it's a very, in itself, healing thing. Because I'll tell you one thing you learn, and that's as you know, man, nature doesn't give a fuck. It will if you fall out and you fall and trip out in nature and you break your leg, there ain't no fairies coming along. You're gonna sit there and
no, not. No, that's totally true. I agree with that 100%. Yeah, well, and that's the little secret. It's not meant to be a secret, but as a healer, the secret is I don't do anything. I just help guide people along to heal themselves. All the power people need to heal, whether it's physical or mental, lies in themselves. They've got everything they need to heal themselves. So really, as a healer, you just you figure out how to guide people, and that's, I think, in some cultures they call them more guides versus healer or practitioner, or that's total key. And I think just living in the now is more you mentioned the youth that you have out for 3 months. I mean, you look at Greece, 75% of people 35 and under are unemployed. We're moving into a new age where not everyone has a job along the assembly line that they just go and do until they retire and then die. And, we're being forced upon that. And really, so you have no other sustainable solution other than to really follow your own passions and to see what really gives you life. And so I think the youth, this is even more important for them. And that's part of, I guess, we've got to help develop that and show them and make it easier for them, less friction for them to live kind of different way of life where you're not just a wage earner and doing what other people tell you to do the whole time, but to take ownership and be somewhat self-sustainable and healing yourself and educating yourself. And that's a better world for sure.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Cho. I mean, I think the whole thing is a whole mindset of getting across to people. You are the brains of the central. It's like me and Dali talk about a lot. You are the brain. Everybody. You have this one experience and on this planet, and I think that we're starting to live in the times where I think where people are starting to break through these walls and these paradigms, and I think one of the things that particularly what really inspires me, and there are particularly amongst youth, kids under 25, I see it a lot because I think because they've grown up with the internet rather than TV, and I think what you see in them is they understand that to do anything, you've got to put work and work and work and work and work, and there's no such things as genius. And I think that's such a great transformation point, because this whole idea, even from a creative angle, where I'm being told that, oh, because you're into art, that you're not into maths. I can be into anything I like. The difference that separates, say, someone like me and someone who really inspires me, like, say, David Irvine or Daniel, it's not because, of any, right, we've all got different experiences, but Daniel and David have spent years and years, and it's accumulated knowledge, and that is what it's saying. But at the moment, the trouble we live in, the paradigm at the moment, to accumulate that kind of knowledge and that kind of skill, it means you're not being rewarded. You're going off by yourself, and you're doing like someone like David Irvine, where you're locking yourself in a room and going, right, for 10 years, I'm going to sit there and build up the whole of Safe Network. He's not, he could have gone on, he could have easily gone away and gone, well, the easier option for me would be, I have this skill, I'll spend the rest of my life, surfing around, the Middle East and just earning loads of money. But he didn't, because there's no reward in that self-sufficiency at the moment. But the Safe Network changes that, because it instantly says, I'm going to get rewarded, and then it's going to start rewarding that self-sufficiency. It's going to reward people putting more effort into themselves and and expressing themselves and building themselves. And that's what I see as the epoch moment of where we are right now, because it's going to transform everything.
It'll allow everyone a chance to be a genius, like David Irvine. Geniuses have always been a little bit immune to the normal. He wouldn't have been able to, I don't think, live that life of just going and making a ton of money and helping some company out. It just, geniuses have a hard time, connecting with that. They just, they don't, that's not what motivates them. That's not what, how they run, and they get nothing out of it. So that's geniuses, I think, through the ages, you study history, a lot of them die or controlled or imprisoned, or because they're you can't control them in that sense. And I think we are going to an age of the genius. The geniuses are finally found a way to give themselves strength and to be rewarded. And that's kind of what is being pushed and supported now, as being a genius. I don't know where I was going with that thought. I'm obviously not part of that group, but
no, this is it. This is the era of the creative is rising, and what's happening. This is why I was saying at the beginning of this conversation. This is the new renaissance, because you're getting the ability for someone like David Irvine to talk to someone like the Ceiling Demons, and then us to collaborate and build, and this discussion to happen. These are. I mean, I think people don't realize how transformative just having this conversation is. We couldn't have had this conversation 10 years ago. I like to go to a book. I like to study it, sit in a library and read all these books. I can just have this conversation with you now. And this is what's going to really start to come. Is not only going to get people connecting like it was back in the Renaissance when we had it over here in Europe, but you're going to get these people collaborating, and you're going to have, you know, you ask David Irvine, he's done, you ask him, one of the inspirations why he's done the whole of the Safe Network is basically to help artistic people and help creative people, you know, to connect. And it's going to be fantastic. That's going to be what I love about it, that people can all connect. This can connect to the scientist, can connect to the medical guy, and we can all connect. And do you know what I mean? Instead of us all being dragged down by TV and all that shit, we can be dragged up by people like David Irvine, because, man, do you know what I mean? That's all my hope is, that we be dragged up rather than dragged down.
You know, we're all going to share in the wealth of a genius rather than, you know, just a select few that figured out how to control them. Sorry, my
no, that's domestic.
Did let the dogs back in again.
So I have to ask you. I mean, you mentioned, you know, we put out in the bio for this whole this podcast, but you said you read David Irvine's white paper. Now, again, that sounds completely normal to me, because, you know, that's in the world we live in for the last year. That's yeah, cool. His paper. But how did you get to read? I mean, what led you to suddenly pick up a guy in Scotland's white paper about a product he's building on something? You know, how did that come across?
You know, I before that I was really getting into crowdfunding and Kickstarter and Indiegogo, and just seeing the power of a whole bunch of people contributing just a little bit. And, you know, and I was into Bitcoin, and on, I think it was CoinDesk, there was the article, the IPO, similar to a lot of people. And I'm a serial researcher. I research everything. I mean, down to what razor I'm going to use. You know, I could easily spend 12 hours just researching every possible option. And so I started looking into it, and that's the first, I'm not sure where I think the white paper, there was a connection on the website or GitHub. And I read one and then read another. I think I read the autonomous authentication first, that paper. No, it was the Safecoin one. That's the one I read first. And that's, you know, what separates the Safe Network from any other project, and there's some really good open source projects out there, and you know, we have great examples. But why I think Safe Network is much more sustainable is it's finally figured out a way to reward the creative. It's taken out the third party, and it's direct connection with the people that create, and we're going to create no matter whether there's money or not money or anything else. We just, that you have to, if you don't create and express your art, whatever it is, you just you just can't, you can't survive. And they've figured out a way for people to directly reward creators, and that without a third party inserting themselves in that direct relationship. And so I just reading that paper and seeing how there's no human involvement in that component of it. So we can just not spend so much time and energy figuring that part out and protecting, I've got to have my patents to protect my idea because I'm not going to be rewarded for what I do. And just handing that over to mathematics and, you know, a computer to autonomously do that. I don't have to worry about it being fair. You know, the bigger impact I have on the world with what app I create, I will directly be rewarded for that. And I can put more time into doing those things. I instantly knew it was going to be a success. And you know, even today, where, you know, I looked at the Made Safe price last night, and, you know, it's taken a huge dive right now. And I have zero worry. I bought more because there is no other open source project out. There's some really good ideas and all that, but you have to have a way to reward the creative people that are going to continue to build that. That's the only way to sustainably have an open source project long term.
No, I mean, so you read the white paper. You kind of like read all these other bits and pieces. I mean, and I mentioned this again because this is something else you kind of like dropped in the ants conversation. I'm like, oh, what? So you've been running a node. You're one of these kind of outliners who've been actually had a node running. So I mean, how did you? I mean, was that something again? Because I mentioned this because when I first kind of got interested in this, I remember. I've told this story again to people. I'm repeating myself, but I went down to David Irvine and I had the idea for N99, and I said, "Well, great, I'll just learn C++. I don't care. I'll write this all myself." And he just laughed at me. He said, "Chill, don't worry about it. Coders will come." But you kind of gone off, and it seems to me got into all that. So I mean, is that something you did? Did you start to study different computer languages, or how did you get to the point where you ran a node? Because that's pretty technical. It's not just I mean, I think I know quite a bit, but then I'm kind of like, you drop in an ants meeting. Oh yeah, I've been running a node. I'm like, whoa.
Computers. I didn't own my own computer until I was 19, and the first day that I got a computer, I probably for the next year after that averaged at least 12 hours a day on that computer. And with the 225 kilobyte per second connection and the dial-up modem and ICQ and communicating with people in Australia and stuff. I mean, I could spend 24 hours a day on it if I was able to. It just made sense, and I've always had a passion for computers. I tell people I think my calling in life is to be a healer and to work in medicine. But my passion is just anything that has electronics, something electrical hooked up to it. I just can't stop tinkering with it. And my mom's a graphic design artist, and she had all the first Mac and all probably generations after that, and so I grew up and around computers, but I didn't own my first one until I was 19. But I've always wanted to express myself artistically, and I don't have this skill in the traditional sense, but I do web design, I guess, and just built my own computers. And I don't know, I've never taken a class. I've never had anyone give me direct. I just followed my passion, and I guess that can be an example to anyone out there that if you just kind of follow your passion and what gets you up and what keeps you up all night here and there, because you're so interested in it and it gives you that feeling of excitement, this is what can happen when you just pursue it. I no special skills or anything, and I just follow directions. I don't code so much, I'm just adapting and mixing what other people have already done. My brain doesn't work in the sense of I just code. I'm more at just mixing and modifying what's already been done.
So where you sort of stand now, and again, I mean, you don't know sort of, because I only ask this because it's a question I'm asked all the time, so it's been nice for me to ask it. So, how far down the line are you with HealthSafe? I mean, the actual app. I mean, do you think it's when it's the actual network is actually beginning to? Now, I keep saying the word launch, but Paige told me never to. She said it's not launch. Okay, so whenever this, I mean, how close are you to, actually when it is actually, launched as such to be, actually live with your HealthSafe?
Yeah, so I've spent quite a bit of time just researching Vista. That's the Veteran Affairs medical record system that they currently, I think 80 million people in the US are utilizing that system. It's actually the #1 rated electronic medical record system by physicians. It's free and open source. and that people are surprised when they see that statistic. Well, what about this company and this company? And well, that's not the best one, but it was created with the idea of decentralization. I mean, that was their early naming of it, was that. So really looking at it, they use a CTP, that's a serverless database. So really it won't be that hard to just switch instead of using their, I think it's mumps CTP database. Get rid of that and then go ahead and just use Safe as that database to store information. It won't be a whole lot of code. It's all open source on both ends. And so I went as far as I want to go in that I understand how the databases work, how the serverless, and I see exactly where things need to be cut and paste for them to work together. But that's as far as I want to take it. And I'd much rather, I'm just waiting till this network is up and running, and I'll just hire and pay for coders to do that. And, so I've spent this last year just getting my kind of dream team coders and looking for people out there that, have a similar interest in it. And, most of the coders I talk to, they're still stuck in that, well, I need something that's going to pay the bills. Mm-hmm. And, so I haven't pushed it too much, and when time comes and I have the resources to either pay them or they can become a partner. And so I'm absolutely going to create a decentralized autonomous company because I don't want control over something that big as Health Safe, and I want the creators. I don't want to then make myself that third party that's inserting myself. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I want to happily give it away. Mm-hmm. And so each coder that takes part, they will have a choice. They can be paid outright up front, or they can, get paid a little bit and then share a little bit of, what is made from it. But, this is it's a project that I think everyone on the planet has a part with. So in a sense, hopefully there's coders out there that see they've got an obligation that they really could be a part of coding something that affects generations in a positive way.
Well, the only thing I can say to you, Travis, and again, it's just through the conversations I've had recently, and I'll send you this all obviously privately, offline. I'd recommend you reach out to Melbourne, down to the Melbourne Mesa, down to that crew, because they actually, I don't know if you're aware, but they work in it's called the Melbourne Bitcoin Technology Centre. So it's a hub of all these people who are into decentralization and they're all into this kind of thing. And I'm sure if you reached out to them, they would be a great vine to sort of tap, and they would I'll definitely send you the resources, because I know that's one place that you could reach out to, and I'd recommend you reach out to them.
That's a great place. Interesting enough, my wife lived there for a little while in Melbourne. So I used to call it Melbourne until I, went and visited her there. It was when we were just dating, and yeah, I love Australia, and just having that connection alone is enough for me. But no, I'll definitely pursue that. And I'm still just been in the educate myself. And I need to understand all the moving parts before I can try to get everybody working together. And so I haven't put a whole lot on to getting things finalized and set down. And I kind of want the network running. So when people are interested and start writing code for it, that can just happen. But yeah, I guess we're getting to that time where we need to start making those connections and networking and getting plans set.
Well, it's one of the things is underestimated in this life about how powerful networks are, and it's that whole 6 degrees of separation. You know what I mean? If you just connect a few people in your circle, fair enough, but what the real power is having the random connection, because then when you pull up the whole network, and that's the power of networks. And this is what we're going to really, I think we're going to start seeing. I think instead of focusing on about, values of Safecoin in trade and like, we need to focus on more about the value of networks and the power of networks and what the value that brings. Because that's what I'm saying, this is what I love about the safe network in general, is that I have resources. I could use some of my resources from whatever I want to do, and it's the network thing. So I think there's a big area to discuss about networks, because I think it's one of the weaknesses that I've discovered a lot in general, and particularly when I talk to a lot of scientists, and I've had a few on this podcast, and they say the same thing to me, that a lot of the world, and I see it from every genre, is that everybody's just focused on their own little world, and nobody ever connects this small. So everyone's got specialist knowledge. They have fascinating knowledge, but they're not speaking to this person, and this is what we're starting to. And the main safe network is going to open up completely. Is this communication, this connection thing. And I think that's a very powerful tool for us as a human being, just to utilize that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree. Yeah, it seems like now's the time to start building those networks.
It is indeed. I mean, when you're sort of like, at the point when someone would go and use the your app, would they have to be using Safecoin, or is that something you would give away just as a complete, just almost like an open directory? Is that all something that I could use some of my resources that I've gained from my Safecoin to go, I want to explore that more? I mean, is that something you've integrated into your?
Yeah, so I've thought through it a bit, and really, I'll be rewarded just by the use of the app. I'm hoping that it wouldn't be that hard. Because the way Vista is, it's actually a set of 200 different programs that deal as far as even running entire hospitals and all the supplies and the money and keeping track. I mean, there's 200 different programs that have already been written for that system. And I plan on just starting with the most important one, which is the actual record. But depending on what resources I have, I want to convert it into, I think Rust is probably a great match for it. But so having integrated in Safe, I'm not worried about making money off it, because I should be rewarded by how popular the app becomes. And so that part right alone is decreasing the friction. And I don't have to worry about those things, or at least haven't been worried about them. Where people will have to use Safecoin is as they store data. So whether it's a CT scan or an MRI or an ultrasound or video from the visit from your primary care provider, and you can go back and review exactly what took place in that, what recommendations were, and they can do it over and over. That's gonna store a lot of data. Or storing your entire genome, which it's down to about, I think, $1,000, you can get your entire genetic genome, but that requires quite a bit of space, data. And so that's where they'll be paying their Safecoin. It won't be to me, it'll be back to the network. So it's just a sustainable ecosystem. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I mean, I'm often asked this myself. I mean, we relate to ants and stuff like that. From a medical position, from your position of a healer and generally, is there any particular metaphor that you use to see, describe the safe network? I mean, I always think the ants one. I think it's a perfect analogy. I know that David Irvine talks about it, and I think it is. But is there a metaphor you would have to the human body, or what it is? Is it just maybe the discovery of antibiotics, or I mean, how do you sort of relate this to? Is it or not?
Yeah, so I think it goes back to what I was talking about, how the individual, the community, and the world, we're all the same thing. We're all connected in a way that is much deeper than we really understand, and we kind of get lost a bit, that we think that it's these third parties that are inserting themselves in between those connections that we need them for that to occur. But so the safe network is, I think it replicates what happens in us. I mean, we're our individual cells versus our more of our higher level of thought process. They're all connected, although if you go down to the microscopic cell, it's its own ecosystem, it's its own world, and it just scales up or down, whatever, but it's all on the same continuum. So whether if I'm talking about myself or I'm talking about my community, we're all the same thing. It's just at what level do you want to scale it and look at it with the microscope. So the safe network, I think it's recreating, it's finally allowing a way for us humans to connect in a natural way. So I think, yeah, using the natural ants an analogy or metaphor, anything biologic is going to make sense, because that's what it's doing, is restoring our way of connecting with each other.
Well, do you know what, Travis? And sometimes you have to just acknowledge that's, I'll tell you this, from a band perspective or an artist perspective, and this is I'll give you my kind of analogy on this. One of the things I learned as an artist, and I've done this a few times in my life, is when I've been creating away and I painted and I've done it and suddenly I've got this all in my head, and then I just do one stroke too many and it just ruins the whole thing. or like in a musician, where you do it and you just try to play that one too many, recording level too many. What you just said then is the perfect way. You basically just dropped the mic and gone boom. Right, that's it. We're going to end this podcast now, man.
Good night.
Yeah, exactly. And we're out of here, man. But before we do go, that's like I said, I think that is a perfect Zen way to end this podcast. Two things. Where can people reach out and where can they find you? Or what? I mentioned this, maybe not you as a person, but we'll put it into the link as well. But that area you were talking about, is there anywhere in particular that you would recommend that people go out to research more about what we've been discussing tonight?
As of right now, on the 25th of October 2015, the highest concentration of people with similar thought process and like mind is the Safe Network Forum. I've been on it since its creation, and so I'm Mr. Anderson there on there, and so you can find me there. And I'm a pretty open book. I have nothing to hide, and that's so it's very easy to find me if you want to.
That's perfect. And like I say, Travis, I've been looking forward to this conversation for a while, and I'm glad that we kind of, maybe not as much deeply gone into all the things we've done, but it was a great start. I mean, the point I'm trying to make is I look forward to this, maybe the first of many conversations, because there is plenty we can talk about. And do you know what I mean? And I say this to many guests, and I think particularly ones that really understand about the Safe Network. My biggest thing I'm really looking forward to now is when we're not doing this through Google and we're actually doing it on the Safe Network. And that's the day I really look forward to.
Absolutely. Well, I just thank you so much for what you have brought to the community and life as people. I mean, that alone is just is a perfect example of some great things happening out there in the world. And so thank you for your part in that. You definitely are leading the charge with connecting people.
Well, all I say many times, Travis, is all I do is I just point people in the direction of great ideas, and that's and if I succeed in any way, that's great, because it's all about, because all we're all trying to do is just trying to push this world away from the world we are in now, and anything can help, and that's why I think it's a growing momentum. Well, look, we're doing the typical what I'm saying now. We're adding more brushstrokes to this artwork. We should just leave it. Right. So for me here, from me here in cold Scotland and the Rocky Mountains of America, we're going to say good night. And as Travis quite rightly said, man, life is people.